I have no idea how we arrived at week 13, but I thought this would be a good day to give you a little bit of an introduction to the week 13 readings that we have ahead of us. So let me share my screen with you. So this week, our title is Stories Matter, Ecology, Narrative, Materialism, Post-Humanism, and Hummus. So we are now kind of circling back to the question of theory and the question of story, and starting with this image of the crocheted coral reef to kind of ground our explorations of nature. So for this week, we are turning back to land in many ways, or turning to theories of science to think about the ways that law and science might interact to give us another range of questions to ask. And so we've got three theorists again to explore in the one day that we have to deal with these or turn to these three theorists. So the first of these readings is we will look at Donna Haraway. So Donna Haraway may be old news to you guys or new news, but she's a very interesting theorist for our times. Was the first tenured professor of feminist theory in the US in the early 80s, and really working at this intersection of science and philosophy of gender. So very well known for, amongst any other things, the Cyborg Manifesto, as she's been asking kind of these questions about what is it to be alive, what is it to be human, particularly in the context of the assemblages that make us up. So the Cyborg Manifesto, pretty important work. Primate Visions, again, taking up this question of the relationship between human animals and non-human animals, so really engaging with those questions of living. Simians, Cyborgs is that last one. Off the top of my head, I can't even remember what the other one is, but of Simians and Cyborgs, again, taking us in the kind of winding these together. A book called Modest Witness at, my gosh, it's on my shelf, at Second Millennium Female Man Meets Onco Mouse, which is a fabulous, the first chapter of this book takes up just the title, which has little copyright and trademark symbols in it, and ampersand and email addresses. And as is typical for many of her books, they are layered texts that include photos, images, fragments, sheets, all sorts of things, that photos, paintings, drawings, lab results. So the book really requires us to look at and think with a whole bunch of different texts in order to kind of flesh out these interesting questions of virtual and actual that we've been playing with. But a really amazing book. And we are going to work with a chapter from Staying with the Trouble, Making Kin in the Cthulhu And the Cthulhu is a word that she's been using as opposed to the Anthropocene, for example, but to deal with these end times. If you spend a little bit of time with the cover, it kind of captures much of what I think she's asking us to think with, and that is, again, the question of assemblage, the bones, the butterflies, the fragmentary pieces that make up something. So you can see that's what we'll be engaging with. Often, sometimes people find her writing dense in the same way, or even maybe more complicated ways than some of you indicated from last week's readings. Her theoretical inspirations are multiple. And so when you're reading her, you are kind of being thrown into a place where all sorts of different discourses are being woven together. And I use the word weaving very specifically, because that's very much the project she's involved in, is the suturing and drawing and the placing of things together in assemblage. So I give you the possibility, or tell you that there is a possibility of choosing to either read the chapter or go watch the video of her online. She's one person who in particular, her voice, her presentation when she's doing her talk seems very different than the text. So the text feels very, I think it as playful, but quite dense. But when you hear her speak, you'll see she's just like full of laughter and humor and um, nerdiness in a really engaging way. So she'll be inviting us to think about what it means to stay with the trouble, stay with the difficulty, not run away from the difficult problems, and really take seriously the stories that we use, the stories that we tell each other, and the important role of those stories in how we see the world. So our second reading will be Dean Bavington, who's in the Department of Geography at Memorial University of Newfoundland. I encountered this book several years back, Managed Annihilation, An Unnatural History of the Newfoundland Cod Collapse. So it's an interesting and timely, well, everything's timely here, but a timely encounter with the question, how is it that our stories about management, all the ways that the Canadian government has sought to manage resources, he kind of makes visible that the very managerial logics may be in fact responsible for the cod collapse. So far from the government's management procedures stepping in to avoid or to try and minimize the other external processes going on in the world, he asks us to think about management itself as a logic that participates in a collapse in a way that requires us to rethink our stories about what management looks like, our relationship to other resources. And again, it gets us at kind of the question about Indigenous and non-Indigenous fishing practices on the East Coast. So another set of stories for us about legal regulation and the place of management. So that's Dean Bavington will take us in that direction. Our third theorist will be Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's the director at the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment at SUNY. And her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, I was having troubles with photocopying, and I didn't really want to photocopy my copy for you guys because my copy of this book looks like my copy of Wendy Brown. So it's just highlighted the crap out of this thing. I love this book. If I was to tell you even last year, what's a book I would recommend for everyone to have and work your way through this year, this book is it's a poem, it's a song, it's really beautiful. So I've given you links to both the Mac version and the Kindle version of the book on the web page. Don't read the whole thing. I'm proposing just kind of the preface, Sky Woman Falling, and the Gift of Strawberries. So 3 relatively small chapters, each really done in a very, again, different narrative form. So you can see not only her ideas as well, hear about relations, interconnectivity, kinship, the stories we work with them, but again, another person who does Western and Indigenous science. So again, at this intersection of science and philosophy, spinning out these questions of that intersection in, again, a very different form of language. So those are the 3 readings. Kimmerer is very beautiful and easy to read. Bavington gives you it's going to give you lots of tools for thinking about management. And Haraway is just like a cornucopia of ideas and connections. So watch the talk and see all the ways she pulls on and references theoretical and other materials around from across the intellectual and activist worlds. So those are the 3 readings. It'll be great if you get a chance to read all 3, but you can also be selective at this end. These are 3 books, 3 pieces of thinking that are worth taking with you forward. So we will use them on Monday's class next week to talk about the 3 readings. Wednesday's class, we're going to be doing some of the work of Donna Haraway and trying to make connections across all 13 weeks worth of readings. So there you go. That's an introduction. And truly, I hope you enjoy these 3 readings.